Welcome into the BGN Radio Instant Reaction Show. We appreciate you hanging with us, myself, Jess, Rachel, you on Twitter, the chat. Hit that thumbs up button. Make sure you're subscribed here to the channel as well. And a tight one came down to the wire. I think there were a lot of good things. No such thing, of course, as a moral victory, but we did want to see some sense of growth. We wanted to see some sense of continuity, and we wanted to see adjustment, even if things don't go according to plan at the start of games. And I think we saw a lot of positives despite the Chargers escaping with that last second 3-point field goal there, our difference maker with the field goal to get the 3-point victory. And you look at some good across the board. I do think, though, that there are things that will come up in this conversation that won't be just nitpicking or just negative to be negative. And it wasn't simply because they lost. Let's look at it from a couple of different ways. And I think the biggest thing that we've been talking about all year has been this is not a team with playoff aspirations. So first and foremost, if this is a team where you honestly thought can win the division, had any type of playoff aspirations, then yeah, I think you're upset about today. I think you walk away probably pissed off that they found a way to lose this football game, especially the way in which Justin Herbert or that Chargers offense just kept the football all the way down the field. Smart to keep it away from Jalen Hurts. But in the grand scheme of things, of what we finally saw last week from Detroit, and I think from myself, Jess, that the two of us having this conversation about growth and week to week and week to week. And look, you're there. So clearly, I think it's easy to get caught up in the emotion and get upset at things. But when you come home and look back on it, honestly, and I'm not going down the moral victory route. That's the second time I use that phrase because I want to distance myself as much as possible. But I have to say, like, my stomach, I wasn't there. And my stomach was turning towards the end of it. Like, it felt like, off the seat of my couch, we had a game. I had that tingling feel. Like, I'm sure it was craziness down there when there was still a shot to do it. Honestly, we'll talk about some negative things, but I felt pretty good overall from the things that we've been asking Hurts and Sirianni and ultimately this offense to see. Felt pretty good overall, even though they lost that football game.
Yeah, I think ultimately, when you separate kind of looking at it from an objective point of view, as well as sort of, from the fan perspective, it's always disappointing to lose. But
Sure.
Objectively, if you look at it from what we've been saying so far this season, you hit the nail on the head with all the things you mentioned. The growth, the things that we wanted to see adjustments from week to week. We wanted to see some continuation in the kind of game plan that they had against Detroit. And as I was walking out of the stadium, I don't know how many people are feeling the same way, but I thought to myself, okay, this is the kind of game that I was expecting throughout the season. That was the kind of performance that I was expecting. They hung in there all the way until the end. There was nothing that was so egregiously, this is the reason they lost kind of thing. It's just they were outplayed by a better football team. And that's something that I can make my peace with, because at the end of the day, I think that their recipe for winning is Jalen Hurts throws the ball 20 to 25 times and they run the ball between 30 and 40 times. And that's not a bad recipe to win at all. And that's what they did today. And unfortunately, there were plays left out there, both offensively and defensively. But ultimately, like, Jalen Hurts threw the ball 117 times, threw the ball 17 times today for, 160 some yards, I think 162 yards.
162, yeah.
But then they had, 176 rushing yards. So, and Jordan Howard, Jalen Hurts, Boston Scott, all were the ones that really contributed to that. Again, and Jalen Hurts wasn't even the leading rusher this week. So they didn't have a single 100-yard rusher, but they had over 100 yards on the ground. They got Devontae Smith, 5 receptions, over 100 yards, which was desperately needed for him to get involved there. And every ball that he threw to Devontae Smith was absolutely perfect. Devontae made great catches on all of them as well, and it looked easy. So, I think that the frustrating aspect to me, honestly, is still the defense, because they're still the veterans of the group that should do a better job here and there. And I understand that guys like Davion Taylor are still a project. I think my bitterness with him comes in just in the sense of, like, he played like under 50 football games in his entire life. And they drafted Jalen Reagor instead of Justin Jefferson, and then drafted Jalen Hurts, and then drafted this kid that's literally never played football, which is just,
It's a
I mean,
rough stretch. One
right.
through
I think
three.
that goes
Yes.
into it. So I think it's the defense that frustrates me more
Yeah.
because I feel like they should be better than they are. But I didn't really have any frustrations today with the offense. I mean, there were a couple drives that, early in the game, it looked like I was going to be angry at Nick Sirianni for going back to his old ways again. But they made the adjustment. They figured it out. They were running the ball effectively. It set up the passing game for them a little bit more. And the offense played well for the most part, but I
It
I
did.
thought they looked like a good, solid young offense that's starting to figure it out. And that's all I wanted out of the season from them, is them to just keep figuring it out and look like they're improving every week. And but the defense has to hold their own as well. And they did in the beginning, and it just kind of.
It fell. Well, here's the thing. We'll talk about the defense in a second, because I feel like that's going to spiral, rightfully so,
Sure.
into more of a negative conversation. But
Yes.
but let's ride the high here if we can, just for a second, because I think one thing that's been lacking week in and week out is the consistency enough, at least, to form an identity. Yet, and you brought it up as far as Jalen Hurts not throwing a lot, and I'm with you. For 2 straight weeks, two completely different game scripts as far as how the game is played out. Yet for 2 consecutive weeks, we've seen an identity. We've seen Jalen Hurts not asked to throw the ball a ton and be the reason why they win or lose in the air. We've seen Hurts be an integral part of the ground game, but also, no matter what, not moving away from it. And I was kind of concerned that there were multiple points in this game where Sirianni could have just hit the eject button and been like, all right, that's it. Like, I felt nervous for him, not for me, but like for him, that there was going to be this moment where it was just going to be like the Raiders game. All of a sudden you pull away from it. Whoa, whoa, whoa. It's been working. But 2 straight weeks, the offense now has an established identity. And that's something that I think we've all been clamoring for, that makes it easier to see a loss. Now, look, Justin Herbert, that offense, they were smart. They kept Hurts off the field. But that's the respect I think you see. And you mentioned Devontae Smith. And look, Hurts was not terribly accurate by any means in the first half. But
Sure.
what about the difference in the second half? Being the reason in those small sample sizes of throwing the football. And that's where I think it goes back to your point, Jess, about throwing limited throws, but still being valuable in the air. And
Yeah.
now we have an identity. We have an identity.
He was extremely effective in the passing game. It wasn't like he was irrelevant in the win today or the loss today. It wasn't like he was irrelevant on the success that their
Right.
offense had. He put the ball where it needed to be. There was the one to Goddard that he floated, which, I mean, if you look back at it, he couldn't step into his throw and follow through. He would have had a hand in either Jason Kelsey's helmet or someone else's helmet there. He just couldn't follow through the way he wanted to. He couldn't put the ball directly on Dallas. He didn't really have a choice but to float it. And that was one that was a missed opportunity. But other than that, that was pretty much the only one. One of his incompletions was when, it was a blitz and he just had to get rid of the ball or he was going to take a. That was one of them. There was one where he threw it out of bounds at one point. So, the guy had 6 incompletions today. And his, some of it, like I said before, the balls that he put on Devontae Smith were absolutely perfect. So, as long as he's continuing to improve, the offense is continuing to improve. And a great point you made, forming an identity. We've seen something different every single week, and we don't know what we were going to get from this team week in and week out. But if this is what their identity can be, they can win football games this way once they put it all together in all 3 phases of the game.
You know what I'm afraid of now is that they've formed an identity on defense, but it's what we saw today, right? Like, it's why is it so easy to throw the football? Once again, we have somebody over 80% completion. There was no pressure
this season.
What is going on that there just is this refusal to put this type of pressure on a quarterback? And I get it, like, Herbert can burn you, but at the same time, why take that risk of keeping Eckler, Williams, Allen, all of these guys in front of you, especially when Slay's out? It's kind of like, all right, now you're really playing ultra conservative. And then the Derek Barnett penalty. I saw this from Jeff
Always
Kerr.
him.
2 defensive offside penalties this year, just to 1 sack. To 1 sack.
I just go back to the clip of Nick Sirianni where you can see him mouthing.
Yes,
It's always him. And it is.
And once again,
I mean, the things that he does positively do not outweigh the boneheaded mistakes that he makes. I don't even know.
no.
It wasn't even the offsides penalty, but it was earlier in the game. I just get, we get a text in the family group text, time to cut Derek Barnett. It happens at least 6 times a season. Do we get that in the extended family group text? A cut Derek Barnett pops up somewhere.
Oh, that's great.
I mean, they're not going to just cut him because they can't admit defeat on draft picks ever. But I mean, he's not good enough. And I don't know. Did Josh Sweat ever come back after he limped off the field?
I don't think so. No.
I didn't think he did either, which is why we saw so much of Derek Barnett. Because honestly, I would have to believe that in that situation, Derek Barnett wouldn't have been out there.
I'd hope
time.
So. Yeah,
I don't think he would, because I feel like we haven't seen as much of Derek Barnett's boneheadedness because he's been on the field less and less. And it's because Josh Sweat's been playing so well, and he just unfortunately got hurt today. I think the injuries killed him a little bit on the defensive end because there was a period of time where Avonte Maddox was back in the locker room. Obviously, They lost Slay at one point. Then Josh Sweat went down. They were struggling a little bit on that side, but I mean that's still not an excuse for the abysmal play of the defense.
That's the thing. And I saw in the chat here, we appreciate everybody popping in. Chris Clark today had me thinking, is it Gannon scheming? Is it the D players are so bad at consistent execution, especially on that D line? Gannon doesn't trust his D line to be able to do much. I'll say this and take a crack at that, please, Jess. But before that, I think what we saw too was as bad as the Chargers were talent-wise on defense, they didn't feel like they wore down. Like it didn't feel like they were physically worn down. They just aren't good defensively when it comes to wrapping up and tackling and really playing that run. Eagles, it just, I don't know, watching that defense in the second half, it just felt like they were slowly being bled out. And that it wasn't going to stop in the sense of like they were going to no longer look like they were slow and lethargic and turn it around. So I just wanted to offer that as kind of the backdrop of it, because I don't think it's as crystal clear as either coach versus player, but those guys were gassed towards the end of that last drive at the very least.
I think you're right there, which is obviously an issue in itself. My other question, I think, would be, who the hell is Jonathan Gannon to not trust some of these veteran players? Like, that's my question there. Like, I understand that people have their frustrations with some of these players, but if they're being asked to do something like Fletcher Cox, obviously, made his point a couple weeks ago that, he was being asked to play in a way that he wasn't used to. And for a guy that has played at his level for so long and been one of the top 3 at his position for so long in the NFL, to be asked to play a different way, I think that's disrespectful to Fletcher Cox, which makes me pose the question, who the hell does Jonathan Gannon think he is? And I feel like that again in that situation. Like if Jonathan Gannon doesn't trust someone like Fletcher Cox, or the way Javon Hargrave's been playing, or the Darius Slays of the world, and some of these other veterans, right, Rodney McLeod, that have proven themselves in this league time and again, that isn't acceptable to me. If a guy like that, who is still trying to establish his way in his position in the league, like it's not Jim Johnson saying he doesn't trust the guys out here. You know what I mean? Like that's not what's happening. It's Jonathan Gannon, who are you to not trust these? Your job is to put them in the best position where their talent can flourish and they can be successful. And to this point, that has not been done. They did it last week against a disgustingly abysmal Detroit Lions offense. Do it again. Why are they not? Justin Herbert was hurt all week. Like, go get him. Yeah. Go after him. I don't understand. The Chargers are missing their top 2 corners today.
It doesn't make any sense. He can't help himself. And that's what I'm concerned about is it took 1 week for him to revert right back to this defense, and it's a pattern now where
Yeah.
we now what's the number as far as over, is it 75 or 80% completion percentage going up against this defense? It's
I mean,
every
they
other
get
week.
5 quarterbacks over 80.
That's
I don't know
ridiculous.
what I'll figure it
But
out.
but in its own right, I mean, think about what's happened here is there's now a pattern that this defense has. And you're right. You've got a first year brand new coordinator telling a guy who's on a Super Bowl winning defense where this wasn't Nick Foles stepping in on that defense. This wasn't a bunch of backup line. Like that defense was top 3 to 5 each and every week throughout the year. And Fletcher Cox was the anchor of that. And now, to your point, you've got somebody coming in trying to rework and do things differently, but it's not working. Here's the thing. It's not like through 9 weeks we can turn back and say, hey, Fletch, look, I get it. Things were different under Schwartz, but look at this defense. Look at what you guys are doing under Jonathan Gannon. Look at all of the positives. There's nothing that we can point to. And to be honest, this is as close to a moral victory as you can. But then you start to look at the defense and we become enraged because as much as we're talking about the positivity of the identity on offense, it's terrible now to see that on defense. And yet, Chris Clark is right. Not good when your DC is scared of getting beat by a majority quarterbacks in the league. That's what it keeps coming back to.
Right. And I mean, I know people had their issues with Jim Schwartz. That man was scared of nothing.
No.
Like, he was scared of no one. And I think that, again, while we had our gripes with him here and there, I mean, his defenses were always productive. And, there were injuries a lot of the time. And last year, that secondary was just, I mean, there were people that were bagging groceries at the store like a week prior that week and ended up on the field on Sunday. They were such a mess in terms of personnel, but Jim Schwartz always had a productive defense. They always, and you said it, the year that they won the Super Bowl, they were the best defense in the NFL. They were the best run defense in the NFL, and they were the number 2 passing defense behind the Minnesota Vikings. There's a reason they won the Super Bowl. They didn't even, I mean, Tom Brady threw for 500 yards in the Super Bowl, but they didn't win,
No, and that was an anomaly, if anything.
Yeah. Right. And that's the thing. I mean, we talked about it earlier in the year. In his 5 years here, or 4 years, whatever it was 2 games where they let up more than 40 points. The Eagles did it twice in 4 games. Twice.
It's maddening to see this.
It's bad.
Yeah. I feel like it's so counterproductive because we know that this game is not about one area. So it doesn't matter how much this offense grows and how much Jalen Hurts can step into a franchise or even Nick Sirianni picking this thing up. If this is what we're getting from the defense week in and week out, it's not sustainable by any means.
Right.
And that's going to kill this team. I'm curious because we're going to hit Rachel up, and I know she's been hitting Twitter left and right for responses. I think we've pretty much covered the split as far as like where the positive has been offense, game plan, execution, especially Hurts, and where our frustrations have been on defense. Do you think Twitter and reaction is going to be negative on Hurts or negative on Sirianni on this game? I don't know how much people could really focus on that or why they would use like a 3-word response and waste it on Hurts on anything negative, but I don't know. I'm always curious how the temperature is before we go there.
I think that the vibe that I'm seeing so far is it's I would say like a 70-30 towards the defense sucks. And then there's the people that just don't really like Jalen Hurts for whatever reason and don't want Hurts to succeed for whatever reason. And I mean, these are just like the idiots you have to ignore. Because, if people are wasting their 3 words response on like, oh, Jalen Hurts blows. And you're like, okay, well, that's false. And you're just bitter for whatever reason. You're just mad about something else for whatever reason it might be.
That does fit the 3-word criteria. So nice.
Right. So like, that's just, you have to like take it for what it is because there's the people that are just going to be angry. But I think for the most part, people are really just, I mean, they're frustrated with the defense because the defense is just so bad. And I know that people are really sick of the, oh, well, Jalen Hurts has only played X amount of games, but also, like, no one's ever this hard on a quarterback their rookie season, ever. It doesn't happen. Even in Philadelphia, people aren't this hard on a rookie quarterback. People were not this hard on Carson Wentz his rookie year because there was growth to be seen. And also, there wasn't a huge frustration with Doug Peterson either, which I think helped. But
Yeah.
there was positives, there was growth, there were good things that we saw week in and week out. And when they weren't going well, we go back to the Cincinnati Bengals game that year. Like, that was an anomaly. That was so bad in that season. But there were other games that you saw really good things from both rookie quarterback, rookie head coach that gave you hope for what they could do. And obviously then, they come out, and I know Carson got hurt, but they still don't win a Super Bowl without Carson Wentz playing the way he did through 14 games. So you have to keep looking at Jalen Hurts through that lens. And we don't have to keep saying, oh, it's only his 13th game, it's his 14th game. We don't have to keep saying that, but you have to look at it through this lens of, this kid's, what is he, 23, 24? We're at the point in life where quarterbacks are coming out and they're younger than I am. Like, that's what I have to keep saying to myself. Like, he's young. He's a young guy. And I understand that he played in some top college programs, but the NFL is a different animal. You have to get used to something different every week. People are smarter in the NFL, and people are smarter and better than you. So there are a lot of things that have to be improved on, but I'm not ready to just write him off based on a couple bad performances here and there. I thought he played really well today.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree. I think if anything, and look, there's always going to be, as you mentioned, the people that are going to go out of their way to be trolls and assholes and everything. And we get that. But I think realistically speaking, what we've seen, and again, it goes to the 2-game stretch, but really in times where they've looked good or they've looked bad, and he's been able to kind of balance it out in the second half. Jalen Hurts has earned, if it's not here for whatever reason, because of the draft picks, etc., but Jalen Hurts has played to the level of earning a shot as a starting quarterback in the NFL. And I think that there's a lot you can build off of. Look how deadly he is. Like, so easy to pick up yards with him on the ground, especially when things are falling apart. And I have to be honest, because I've been beyond negative, I think, week in and week out when it comes to Nick Sirianni, more so than anybody on the offense. But look, the past 2 weeks have earned him the opportunity, I think, to continue to prove that he can establish and maintain this identity, to where before, I think a lot of people, and I was in this camp, were just waiting. We were just waiting with that red pen to be like, all right, hand the test in so I can fail you. Come on, hand it in. I'm ready to go, like ready to fail you. Gannon, I don't even need to see the test. No. Like, the fact that he reverted back to what we saw before the Detroit game, I don't think he's long for this by any means.
I totally agree. I think Jalen Hurts, no matter what this season had, I think it was necessary. Jalen Hurts needed to play 16 games. Assuming he was healthy, or 17 games. Assuming he was healthy, he gets the full season. You need to do that based on the shit show that's been the Philadelphia Eagles quarterback room for the last 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
He needed to play the season. Play out the season, see what you have from there. I don't understand everybody that wants to write him off less than halfway through the season, and just be like, oh, it is what it is. He can never improve. He can never get better. Again, I don't trust the people that the Eagles would put around him to try to make him better. That's a whole separate issue that requires me to have faith in Howie Roseman, which we all know I do not.
Which is founded.
Right. And so I just think that, I'm totally with you. I don't need to see any more from Jonathan Gannon. I've seen enough.
Look at David G. I know, Rachel, I know you have some tweets here, but I'm curious, and if you want to pop in as well, the three of us can look at this comment, because I think it's interesting. Before we get to Twitter, David G brings up a very fascinating point here that's not discussed enough about moving on. Now, again, if it's Fletcher Cox at the end of the year, we always know that they neglect the linebacker spot, regardless of how they're going to commit to someone like Singletary or even Taylor, who they have a 3rd-round draft pick invested in. The secondary is always going to be a question mark. They keep bringing in young cornerbacks, hoping that somebody's going to work out. But the bottom line, and this is what David asked, and I'm in full agreement here, the more you need to rebuild or retool or bring in new people, the more you have to address this defense at the end of the year, even if that does mean trading a big piece and moving on and bringing in other pieces, the less Jonathan Gannon needs to be involved, right? Like you can make the argument, okay, one person, that's it, like a backup cornerback you're bringing in, maybe, and I wouldn't want him back. Gannon's back. But if you're doing to the level in which David's suggesting and having more of a mass overhaul, then Gannon has to go. Like that's even more of a reinforcement of why he has to go.
They need to do a mass overhaul. They suck.
Then he can't be here for that.
Yeah. I mean, and I think that's fair. I think that, you know, in a perfect world, Jalen Hurts would continue to improve and show you that he can be your quarterback of the future. And you use your 3 first-round picks on a corner, a linebacker, and probably a tackle, because you're going to need someone, you know, your offensive line is starting to age a little bit. They're starting to shore that up with some younger guys they like, but probably a tackle. And then you're going to need to fill it in a little bit with a safety in the second round somewhere, some more linebackers, and another solid defensive end. So, you know, I think it's going to go one of two ways. They're either going to package the 3 firsts up and try to get a Russell Wilson or someone like that. They're not going to draft a quarterback. There's no one worth drafting at this point using any of those picks on. But in a perfect world, they would keep Jalen Hurts and he would continue to improve, and that's how they would use their 3 first rounders. Again, that's putting a lot of my faith in Howie Roseman to draft appropriately and make correct decisions. And I don't think he has the mental capacity to do that. But I think that's completely accurate. They have to overhaul. I don't want to necessarily say overhaul at the defensive end position, because I do think they've got a couple there that they just need more. And, you know, guys like, you know, you want Kayvon Wallace to be something, but you don't know. And you just, I'm tired of question marks. I think that's what I really trying to say.
I think I would best answer David G's question. Like, I don't think the trust is there when it comes to Gannon. Like, do we want him to be responsible for these young talents based off of the grade that he's gotten so far in this season alone? No, I don't trust him if we're going to target these areas when it comes to draft for the foreseeable future for the benefit of the Eagles franchise. So it's like he needs to go. You know, if the priority is going to be the defense, we need someone with more experience when it comes to the defensive coordinator. And clearly that's not Jonathan Gannon.
It's amazing that we're in this situation. And I think, to be fair, 2 weeks ago, we were in this situation with Sirianni asking, how the hell did we get here? With a head coach that just looks lost and out of touch and really out of sync, like a step and a half behind the game. Jonathan Gannon, it's not even like he's slow. It's not even like, you know, the dub is off if you're watching a movie by like a half a second, where Sirianni was just slow to catch up. It feels like Jonathan Gannon, it's like playing a completely different audio track to a movie, like a cartoon movie behind a Vin Diesel movie. It's like it's completely lost. And I don't know how we got here. I don't know how Jonathan Gannon fooled somebody to get this gig, but for him to go back to what we saw today, it's a head scratcher. And I don't know how drastically it changes to come back. And that's where I imagine the majority, if not all, of the disappointment to disdain and anything in between is focused, I'm sure, on Twitter, right? From the defensive standpoint with Gannon.
Yeah, a lot of it is, majority of it is focused on the defense. Like you guys were talking about, a lot of it, a few of the comments are sprinkled in about Hurts just because they're going to be there, but majority of them are focused around the defense, and rightfully so. So let me see what someone.
I can't wait, because here's the thing.
Okay, keep going, and then I'll follow up.
Oh, no. Sorry. I didn't mean to jump in.
No, you're good. No, I was just going to say, this one says, like, defense sucked today, which we knew was coming. Fire Gannon now. So they're clearly back. Last week, we didn't really see any of the fire anybody. Okay, they're back this week. So fire Gannon now. We see no sacks today. I've seen that one a lot going around. Do we have a sack today at all? Were
they even close?
2 pressures and 31 dropbacks.
So yeah, no
one
sack.
hit.
Bosa had more.
Was roughing the passer.
Yeah.
That's right.
God. I have this like vision in my head of Doug Peterson and Jim Schwartz like watching games together on Sundays, like drinking beers and laughing to themselves. And I really hope that they are doing that, or they do that at some point, because I think they would have a really good time. And I just think it's like a funny mental image that I just imagine happening, because I think that they should. Like I just see them like sitting there, like hands on their belly with a beer, and like they see something just so unbelievable, like that the penalty a couple weeks ago against the Raiders that Nick Sirianni accepted instead of declining, that let them redo the first down instead of taking fourth down, and them just being like and like cheersing their beer. I just think it's a really funny mental image. But I don't understand how either of them fooled anybody into giving them their jobs at this point. I don't get it.
No, it's craziness. And to be fair, both of them did everything they could to get out of here. Schwartz turned down more money, and Peterson sabotaged his exit interview. So I think you may be closer for that dream to be a reality than you think, to be honest.
Jim Schwartz was in the NFL for how many years? I guess he went back to the Titans, didn't he? He's like working with them a little bit, but he was like, I'm going to focus on my health. And I'm like,
sure.
Where the
Eagles
pulled
an Urban Meyer.
Like, imagine just being like, yeah, I've been in the NFL for 40 years, but y'all did me in. Like,
seriously,
I don't want to be here anymore.
Enough. Yeah.
No, you're right. You're right. What about some positives with Hurts or Sirianni? Because as much as I love, and what I was going to say before we jumped in with that side is, I imagine that the negative and the negative energy is going to be reinforced even more so on Gannon, because to be fair, it can't go on the offense. So it's like normally maybe that stuff split and you're not as mad on the defense because you have to expend your energy, evenly here. In this case, it's just a home run smash on Gannon. But I do imagine people were positive with Hurts and at least Hurts and Sirianni, I'm sure. And Devontae Smith, who's been targeted a bunch. I know Detroit was kind of an anomaly, but great to see him get in the end zone as well.
Yeah. I saw best Hurts performance. So that is like a huge pivot compared to some of the stuff we've seen in the past. Hurts looked fine. That's pretty positive. They're not going, just down his throat the entire time. Devontae equals hope. I think that's probably one of the best ones I've seen today. Devontae equals hope. So if he can continue to get targeted like he's been getting targeted in today's performance, then I think we're fine offensively. It was entertaining.
Yeah.
It was.
I'm telling you.
Lost by 30, still
like that.
But yeah.
Yeah, they're not super bad today. My personal favorite is the one that says effing Derek Barnett.
Yes.
He's going to be the target of so much. And I don't know. He can't help himself.
Please no. He
can't help himself. I know that's the thing. Like, to your point, if Sweat's out there, then he's not out there. So how many times do we see somebody come in limited? Like, I thought that was going to be, McPherson stepping in for Slay. And I'm thinking, all right, this is a moment where the broadcast is going to go crazy. Guy coming in cold, huge play. And with Barnett, it's the complete opposite, where, all right, kid, you got an opportunity now to do something. And instead, you do exactly what everybody thinks you're going to do, which is screw the hell up.
Yep, he did. It was.
Yeah, MK on the chat, by the way, says, don't forget Rager, one catch. I think Jalen Rager has been effectively taken out of this offense.
Yeah, that one catch was ugly.
He lost yards.
Yes.
It was ugly.
I was like, what are you doing? Why are you running backwards?
Go forward.
Yeah.
Forward. He's not Deshaun Jackson.
No. No.
He's not. Only Deshaun and LaShawn McCoy to an extent could do those things. I want Jalen Rager to do well. I do. I want him to be successful so badly, and he makes it so hard sometimes. And I'm not going to lie to you. I don't think that – I know that everyone's still frustrated about the Justin Jefferson thing, myself included. I don't know if I'll ever get over that. That's not to say that Justin Jefferson would be any better in this situation than Jalen Rager would. That's assuming everything else last year happened the same. I still don't think Justin Jefferson is the guy he was last year in that Eagles locker room, in the Eagles offense. And I don't know if he's, I think he's more talented, but I don't know how much better he actually would be just given the situations and the offensive coordination. I don't think it would be any better.
Yeah, that's fair.
He came back though. That would
What's
be that would be better than JJ Arcega-Whiteside. I would be better than JJ Arcega-Whiteside.
Yes, absolutely. All right, winding down. I did see that comment from Sam on the chat. Herbert passed for 84%. Opposing quarterbacks feel no pressure. That's the theme, I think, that we continue to take in here to next week. And if there's anything else, Rachel, that you want to hit before we get out of here on Twitter, by all means, we can jam that in here as well. But I'll just leave you with this thought when it comes to this coming week, which is the quarterback that they're taking on this coming week is the guy that can pass for 84% no matter what. So he's deadly accurate from short to mid-range. He doesn't throw the ball, extend the ball deep downfield in Bridgewater. This is like the worst possible scenario where Bridgewater could go like 35 of 35 for like 210 yards and still not even torch him, but enough to not turn the ball over and score a couple of times. So that's a major theme I think we take into this next week, which is, hey, this issue is not going away on defense. That's all.
Yeah, the opposing quarterbacks feeling no pressure is such a good point. I think they're just out there like playing catch and having a good time.
Especially when Justin Herbert wasn't performing like himself. I think this performance, like coming back today, he's probably like, "Oh, I'm back," you know, because he wasn't looking great. They
lost their last game before the bye, and then lost right after the bye. They were riding a 2-game losing streak. He had an injured hand all week.
So it would be against us. But I did
stuck in a rut. Come play the Eagles, and you'll be fine.
There you go. Maybe clearly. I had a positive one, semi-positive one to end off on. This one says, "We're getting there," with the sad emoji. So it's not like terrible.
Trying so hard to be positive.
They're trying to be positive. And somebody said, most encouraging loss.
I think yes.
Yeah.
I can take that.
Yeah.
That's probably one of the best things to end on right there. That most encouraging loss. Yeah, absolutely. We saw an identity on offense, and I just think we've all come to grips with what's happened on defense, which is it's not going away until the guy in charge goes away, unfortunately. Yes. All right. Well, look, we'll see what happens next week. Same time here following a later game. We have you covered, the BGN Instant Reaction Show here on BGN Radio. Make sure you hit that thumbs up button and subscribe as well. Hopefully, we'll see things change for the better on defense. Hopefully, we can talk about a victory against the Broncos next week. First and foremost, thanks for hanging with us today. Thanks to Jess. Thanks to Rachel. Thanks to you all out there, really, for being a part of this. We'll see what happens next week. Have a great week, and go Birds.